we got him into rehab.
Yeah.
I don't think he lasted a week before he went AWOL and jumped on a bus and went straight to the Guns N' Roses house. We got stuck in Hollywood for another year after the Elektra deal fell through.
Yeah.
And by the time MCA put out Feel the Shake, all the bands had already gone and they were all out on tours that we were supposed to have. I got into IV needle use at a pretty young age. They would be forced to do the same thing with Steven Adler, and literally did the same thing because it formed a big wedge between our bands. Got the phone call, hey, they're pulling your tour support. They want you to come back and start on your next record. It was still hair metal or whatever you want to call it, but it was a little less pretty and a little more gritty. Well, you're not gay, are you? And I was like, Dad, I'm getting so much fucking pussy you wouldn't even believe it. You guys want to get another singer, go get another singer, but that'll be the last you'll see of me and Jetboy.
Right.
And much to my surprise, they said, okay, well, we're going to get another singer and do this tour. And so I said, all right, well, I'm out. It seemed pretty easy to just make friends with our peers down there, which were Guns N' Roses and LA Guns and Poison. I wasn't impressed by anybody in the music industry. Thank you. And it's guys like you that keep it alive.
The hair metal guru from Warren to Crew. The hair metal guru. Never forget Charlie too.
Hey, it's an honor to welcome Mickey Finn to the channel. Mickey is the lead singer for Jetboy, who dominated the Sunset Strip in the mid-'80s and put out a couple of great albums with Feel the Shake in 1988 and Damnation in 1990. And hell, a phenomenal album in 2019 with Born to Fly. And he's been involved in a ton of other cool projects along the way. With that, Mickey Finn, welcome to the show.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm such a huge fan, and I want to get, there's so much history with you and with Jetboy, but you were a punk rock kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I literally joined Jetboy kind of right out of the punk rock scene. I think there was a progression that led me to like the crossover British metal bands like Motorhead, of course. And there were a few others which kind of appealed to my, when I grew up as a kid. Obviously I was into, everything from Black Sabbath to Lynyrd Skynyrd and Zeppelin and all the classic rock stuff. And when I got into the punk rock scene, it was all new and exciting, but you never kind of lose your roots.
Yep. And
so when I started seeing these bands that were, you'd see punk rockers with Motorhead patches and shirts and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, this is kind of the best of both worlds. So I think I kind of started gravitating to that a little bit more. I had a short-lived band called Sweet Evil.
Okay.
And that was kind of a cross between Motley Crue and Black Sabbath. And
were you singing with them or were you playing drums?
No, I was singing with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My punk rock days, I drummed a little bit.
Okay.
Reign of Terror was a band, and Executioner that I kind of was involved in the early stages with my buddy Bill Franza, who later wound up playing with Jetboy. But yeah, I started singing. I did start my musical career as a drummer, but I was kind of an okay drummer and started doing covers and stuff, and people always complimented me on my voice, which to me I had never really thought about, but it was a no-brainer because it's just something that came very easy to me.
Yeah.
And hanging out in San Francisco, I was living in South Bay, San Jose, Santa Clara area, and coming up to the city, Weekend Warrior, hanging at the Stone and the Mab and the On Broadway and all those clubs. Hold on a second.
No problem.
My French bulldog is getting into my papers. And yeah, I think it was kind of like my girlfriend at the time was friends with Todd Crew.
Yeah.
And he had just joined Jetboy. And that's kind of where it all started. We needed a bass player in Sweet Evil. And Todd was like, we need a singer in Jetboy. So we agreed to audition for each other's bands.
Yeah.
And which I kind of flaked on for a bit. And there's a whole fun story that goes along with that. But they eventually dragged me out to a rehearsal. And to say like, the rest is history. I mean, it literally was like at that first rehearsal, they had a batch of songs that they played, and I immediately just took pen to paper and started writing lyrics. And I think by the end of that first rehearsal, we already had songs. Like I was singing along with the
Yeah.
lyrics and melodies that I wrote, and some of that early stuff. Little teaser, car sex, in the alley, don't mess with my hair. Those happened just right away because they kind of already had those songs,
Yeah.
and I guess that was part of the appeal too. I mean, they just were way more where my head was at, where I was going musically and style wise.
Had they been playing shows before, or were they just
I don't
forming?
think so. I think there is. I met a guy one time at the Rainbow that was like, "Oh, I was the original singer for Jetboy," and I was like, "Huh?" I'm like, "I don't think so, bro." But I think that there was like a short period where they had a guy, and I don't know if they ever played any shows. Billy would probably be the one to answer
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was really the beginning of it all. Todd was the final piece on bass, and I was the final piece on vocals, and from there it just flowed really quickly.
And that's 83, right? When you guys get
Yeah.
together.
Yep, that was 83. And Billy and Fern, were very immersed in the San Francisco music scene. I think Fern was the lead guitar player. Fern was a roadie for a band called Head On.
Okay.
Frank Wilsey,
Oh
who I
yeah.
know played with Stephen Piercy before, and he's played with a ton of people.
Sea Hags.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, for me to jump into that, um, and it was kind of that quick, right? Like, because those shows, like most of the punk rock shows I went to in the city, I mean, that Broadway strip where you had the Stone on one side and you had the Mabuhay and the On Broadway on the other side, that was literally like the equivalent of, the Whiskey and the Roxy
Yeah.
and the Rainbow in a very small area.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would show up and be like my old punk rock buddies and people I knew, and all of a sudden I've got like, this hair and like makeup, and I'm wearing high heel boots and stuff. But it wasn't, it was cool, you know what I mean? Everybody
Yeah.
got along. And I think that's why in the beginning we always had a big mix of everybody at our shows, punk rockers and skinheads and
Yes.
glam rockers and metalheads and everything. It was really a cool time of music, and everybody just kind of not being judgmental and whatever, you were there in that scene and it was all good.
If Motorhead was a band that crossed over to everybody, Jetboy was leaning that way too, because you could like punk and you could like Jetboy anyway.
Exactly, for sure. Yep.
What like if people don't know, you guys ended up being like one of the biggest bands on the scene. Can you kind of tell me like your version of growing the band, first starting out, and when did you realize like, holy shit, something is happening here?
Yeah, again, for me, um, I just really was partying and having fun. You know what I mean? And just branching out on my own, moving away from my mom and dad's, moving up to the city and just really kind of growing. Like Billy and Fern and those guys were way more advanced as professionals.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't know what a producer was or an engineer, or those guys could sit down and tell you who produced this album, who was the engineer, who was the second engineer, what studio they did pre-production, where they recorded the album. They were like music geeks in a way, right? And I didn't care about any of that.
Yeah.
And so for me, um, it wasn't real. I don't think I ever really took it serious. I mean, we had a manager right away. They were the ones that were connected. Billy grew up in the city. They grew up in that scene. I was a transplant to California from New Jersey at about 15 years old. So between, say almost 16 and 20 years old, I still was kind of new to California, and that was a big culture shock because where I grew up in New Jersey was still very, Yeah, I mean, it was rural. It's not like I grew up in the country or whatever,
Yeah.
but when I came to California, it was like, holy shit, man, kids here are like having sex and doing drugs and all this stuff, and it was a very much of a culture shock. So
Yeah.
in that short amount of time, I was still kind of growing up, and these city kids, who I became friends with and started hanging with, were just so much more advanced with everything. And with Billy and Fern, yeah, they were just connected. We had a manager right away. I don't remember ever, outside of maybe like even that. I think one of our first shows, I think we did a matinee at the Mabuhay Gardens, the Fab Mad, and then I think we did a second show at one of Billy's high school friends, like high school graduation party or something.
Yeah.
And even those I think were like big crowds. So like I don't remember ever having to like work our way up and play to like 10 people and
Sure.
five of them are your family or whatever.
Sure.
We kind of hit at the right time. And when we started selling out every venue we could up in the Bay Area, obviously you're paying attention at the same time as what's going on in LA.
Yeah.
And so again, it seemed pretty easy to just make friends with our peers down there, which were Guns N' Roses and LA Guns and Poison. I want to say though, later on it was Faster Pussycat and Bang Tango and more bands as well. But initially, I think it was really Guns N' Roses and Poison, and we were like, well, hey, hook us up with a gig in LA, and we'll hook you up with a gig up here. And so
Sure.
we would go down and we would support them at the Troubadour or the Roxy or the Whiskey or whatever, and we would bring them up, and they would support us in San Francisco and stay at each other's houses and help each other out that way. And by the time we started doing that, we attracted our second manager, who was from LA, and then the wheels start moving fast, and it's like, well, hey, you guys got to get down here because the music business is here, and I can struggle with trying to get A&R people to come see you in San Francisco, which ultimately we want them to see you up there as well, but there's way more opportunities to get people to come out if you're in LA, and
Right.
so that was kind of a progress that took a little while, which we were kind of opposed to, you know what I mean? It's like you don't want to. We were like the glam kings of San Francisco.
Yeah.
You don't want to like sell out and go to LA and become
Right.
part of that, but ultimately you do, and we all did, and
Yeah.
most of the bands that I've mentioned were from other places anyway, and everybody goes to Hollywood to hit it big. But
You mentioned moving from New Jersey to California, and then you get in the music scene.
yeah.
What, and this kind of personal, but like, how was your family about like the direction you decided to take?
Yeah, well, I mean, my parents were, I mean, I grew up in a conservative family, we went to church, and I went to Catholic school the first few years of my life. My parents made me take drum lessons for a year before they agreed to get me a drum set because they were like, you got to prove to us that you're going to work for this.
Right.
So I had the little pad and the sheet music, and I hated it, but I got through it till they got me a drum set.
Yeah.
And obviously the drum set came with us to California and went from the basement to the garage, and then it got bigger, and I've made friends, and we started having jam sessions in the garage and whatnot. But there was definitely a rough period when I got into the punk rock music scene because I started rebelling.
Sure.
And
Sure.
again, like I said, like I'm hanging out with kids that, if anything, were like a year younger than me, and they've been going to concerts and going to shows and staying out all night or whatever. And my parents at that time were still like, they were having a hard time letting me go to like Day on the Green, like a daytime concert or whatever,
Yeah.
And trusting me.
Yeah.
And so when I started hanging out in the city and getting into the punk rock scene, I mean, I don't know, unlike a lot of people I hung out with, I didn't really have anything to rebel against. You know what I mean? My dad didn't beat me. I didn't come from a broken family or anything, but I was still rebelling against whatever there was. Like, I want to do what I fucking want to do, and
Yeah.
nobody's going to tell me. And so
Yeah.
And then that did unfortunately lead me down a path of drugs.
Yeah.
And I got into IV needle use
Yeah.
at a pretty young age once I was exposed to it, and that kind of developed. And um, there was definitely a few years there with, you know, the Mohawks and
Yep.
just the whole attitude, the pierced ears. I mean, every stage for my parents was like, oh my God, he pierced his ears. Oh my God, he shaved his head. He's got a mohawk. He's got blue hair, you know. And so that was definitely a rough spell. When I got into Jetboy, I had left home and moved into my girlfriend's house up in Redwood City, which was kind of about halfway between the South Bay and San Francisco. You know, all the while trying to keep things cool with my parents.
Yeah.
And they were, you know, they had, you know, taught me lessons as far as like, all right, go ahead, go get a job, go, you know, like we're not helping you.
Right.
But and then came the next phase with the, you know, lace shirts and high heel boots and, you know, makeup and pink eyeshadow and stuff. And of course, that was like, you know, I think this is gonna sound kind of messed up, but I think for my dad, like the first thing was like, you know, well, you're not gay, are you? And I was like, Dad, I'm getting so much fucking pussy, you wouldn't even believe it. And my dad would tell, you know, then it was like if I came home for something, and my parents would have friends there or whatever, and my dad would just be like, "Oh, he's not gay. He's getting tons of pussy. I know he looks like a girl, but you know." And so, you know, it was hard, but I think when they started coming out to the shows, you know, you come to the Stone, which was a solid music venue, and it's packed and there's a line down the street and we're literally selling out every show we play.
Yeah.
You know, then my dad was like buying drinks for my friends. That's my son up there. Come on, you need a drink. You need a drink. Like, you know, they got on board
Right.
completely. And then they did help out, you know, as much as a parent could, because they're like, you know, you as a parent, you're like, you know, this probably seems fun now, but chances of you actually making it, it's like, I play basketball, I'm going to be in the NBA. As a parent, you're like, you want your child to succeed, but you also want to prepare them for the possible failure or not achieving that. And so, you know, they did start to help out and help us nurture the dream. There was a lot of years there in between and before I mean, God, when we, and this is kind of flash forwarding, but when we finally signed our deal with Elektra Records, I mean, that was brutal because it was like you know, they're like, okay, yeah, with our music attorney and the labels, you know, the contract's going back and forth. It's going to be signed any day now, and you guys are going to get your advance money, and we'll get you apartments, and we'll get you new gear and setup and everything. And that turned out into us living in a fucking Hollywood apartment on Santa Monica and Vine with like prostitutes and crackheads, you know, and it was like supposed to be temporary. And then when it went on for weeks and we're literally like going to the store and buying like, you know, a block of cheese and tortillas and just barely scraping by with no money. And the parents step in and, you know, send you some money here and there and whatever. But that process, like, just, God, it was rough on us, you know.
Sure. You mentioned the Mohawk. I'm sure you never go an interview without it being talked about. So it was, how did you decide to do this look that, at least for the rock scene, was so far removed from what anybody was doing?
I mean, I think partially because I had Mohawks before in the punk scene.
Okay.
And at one point I had this one that was shaved around and it was just a fin, right? And people started calling me Mike Finn or Finhead Mike.
Yeah.
And years later, when I came up with the name Mickey Finn, which was actually Drew Bernstein, the owner of Lip Service, rest in peace. he's the one that said, you know, you got to have a cool stage name. And, you know, I was like, well, in the punk scene, they used to call me Finhead Mike. And he was like, yeah, Mickey Finn. Dude, be Mickey Finn, you know.
Right.
But also, too, I think it was my girlfriend at the time. She was in hair school,
Yeah.
you know, beauty school dropout. I don't think she ever graduated. But, you know, we were, at that time, we were into alternative music. So bands like Specimen, you know, Love and Rockets, you know, Dead or Alive. I mean, so we were really influenced by more than just punk and metal, and I was definitely not the first one to have that kind of big teased Mohawk look.
Of course.
And I think at one point my girlfriend suggested, like, yeah, you should, you know, shave your head, like set yourself apart from all of these wannabe guys that are just teasing their hair and putting on pink eyeshadow. And, you know, you're more than that. You're different than that. And I just showed up with it. I think I showed up for a show. It wasn't even like a rehearsal. I just showed up with it for a show. And then, yeah, it stuck, and it has become my trademark. You know what I mean? It always impresses me when I look like this and I'm walking around and someone will come up and go like, oh, hey, can I get a picture with you? And I'm like, do you know who I am? Like, I'm not Travis Barker, because I've gotten that before, oddly enough.
Right.
But it's like people, I just feel like without the Mohawk, no one will recognize me. But I guess for a fan that is, or a true fan, you can kind of recognize my face or whatever. But yeah.
Was there, there it is. Was there ever a time, because I know even though you were so recognizable, there were people who were like, well, you don't fit in with what's going on.
No, for sure. Yeah.
Did people, or did the label, or did the band?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Look, you know, here's the thing that sucks about the music business. And I don't know how the music business is today. I really don't, because since our deals with Elektra and MCA, we've dealt with small independent labels. It's a whole different world and style of things.
Yep.
But I think the downside of it is they almost never just discover a band and say, it's perfect, put it out, right? And so then what you wind up with is too many cooks in the kitchen, too many hands in it, and really, like, I mean, I hope I don't offend anyone out there, but outside of the obvious, seeing that we were, you know, blowing up and selling out shows, and then even the amount of magazines that we were in, I wasn't impressed by anybody in the music industry. To me, none of them were musicians. They really didn't know what the fuck they were talking about, but they want to come in and go, well, we don't like this and we don't like that. And I don't, you know, you need to be more like this and you need to be more like that. And then they want you to record 100 songs. And, you know, you're like, why? Like, these are the songs everyone loves, you know, people all the words.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, by the time Feel the Shake came out, there weren't many songs that our fans were used to hearing. Yeah. It was like we had to write a whole, you know, 30 or 40 songs. They put you in the studio and they keep sending you back to do more demos and more demos and more demos. And then they want to pick the ones they like. And it's like, okay, so you are suddenly an expert on Jetboy. Not our fans, not us. You are now the expert, and you want us to write 40 songs so you can pick through and say, we like this one and we like this one and we like this one. And you can bark back a little bit, but ultimately, if you want them, you know, to spend their money, you know, they're like, hey, you know, at the end of the day, it's their fucking money. You know, for anyone who doesn't understand that in the world at this point, every single penny that a record company gives you, whether it's having custom pants made, to buying gear at Guitar Center, to putting you in the studio to record demos, to the money they spend on the record, to the money they spend on the videos, it's the band's responsibility to pay back. And so that's why you see bands sometimes that don't even make money till their second or third huge hit record, because they're still paying back all the money they spent. And they don't, you know, your music attorney and your manager should advise you that way, because ultimately when You know what I mean? It's like, do we really need, 4 pairs of custom leather pants each to go on tour? Or could we maybe like keep making our own clothes like we did before? You know what I mean? It's like,
You probably learned the word recoup pretty quickly.
yeah, exactly. And then, the same thing with the publishing. Publishing companies will fight to give you money up front, but own as much of that songwriting publishing. Um, and so we were pretty smart with that. I want to say we're all our publishing deal is almost up. And we have there's a music attorney in Hollywood that's been helping a lot of bands get the rights to their music back.
Yes.
It's like a 30-year
Yep.
deal, something like that, or
Yep.
40-year deal. Maybe it's 40 years. But we're very close to getting that back. And once we have it back, at least then we can do whatever we want with
Yes.
it. If we want to sell it on iTunes or we want to,
Yes.
reprint stuff and whatever, we'll get 100% of the money as opposed to money still going to the publishing company that
Yes. Okay.
part of that.
When do you remember like Elektra or label interest? When did that start to happen?
So I think pretty quickly after we started coming down and playing shows in LA, we had interest. We were able to get record company people to come out and see the band.
Yeah.
And that was orchestrated through the managers and whatnot. And there's showcase after showcase after showcase. But again, it just seemed to take forever, and they just kept nitpicking every little thing. And I remember it's ironic, but like at one point, there was a point where I was motocross riding, like on the weekends and stuff, right? A friend of mine, Drew from Lip Service, we got into it, and we would go take our dirt bikes out and go dirt bike riding. And I had it was like a motocross brand water bottle that I had on stage. And I remember we played the Troubadour, and after the show, our manager was like, well, the A&R guy he didn't like the sport bottle on stage. And I'm like, what would he be happier with a fucking Jack Daniels bottle filled with iced tea? Like,
I was
what
just
is
gonna
it?
say that.
It's a fucking water bottle, and that's just a good example though of some of the things they come with. It's just like they don't like a certain outfit, or they don't, you need to, have your, don't talk so much in between songs, or talk more in between songs, or it was just like it just seemed to be always be something.
Yeah.
And then you get the feeling like, come on, it's not rocket science. Are you stalling? What's the deal? Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess their ass is on the line, because if they tell the label these guys are going to be the next big thing and it doesn't happen, they could be out of a job. But it's like, there's a point where kind of enough is enough. Like, make a decision, say yes or no. And
Yeah.
I know, I won't ever say we had like a massive bidding wars, but I mean, there was labels, there was Geffen, there was Warner Brothers, there was Elektra, and it's just you start to see the ones that keep coming back. Elektra was the most into it. We didn't realize at the time that because Elektra was an East Coast based label, we didn't realize the West Coast offices were kind of suffering, right? And they were very small offices. I mean, it wasn't like MCA was a huge facility, and and as history speaks, that's what happened with Elektra. So we recorded the record for them, and then shortly before our release date, they came in and they just cleaned house from the president on down through the whole staff. They got rid of everybody, and we got shelved, and then we had to start all over again. MCA came to the table strong right away, but there was about a year of negotiations with the contract back and forth, and they wanted us to scrap the record and just start on a new record, and we didn't want to do that, so
Elektra had put a bunch of money into the band, right?
yeah.
I mean, Tom Allen produced it.
Probably $500,000. I would say they probably spent $500,000 on the band.
Did anybody, and not that they would have explained, but did anybody from Elektra? I mean, Why
No,
just not put
unfortunately,
it out?
yeah, you don't get a lot of explanation. Somebody calls your manager and says, "Yep, I mean, look, they were all still. Peter Philbin was the president of the West Coast offices. Gone.
Yeah.
I mean, what more do you need to hear other than,
Right.
well, they fired the president, they fired your A&R guy. Pretty
Yeah.
much everyone is gone, and you would think that they would look at all the press we were getting at the time because we were in every magazine.
Yeah.
The record was done.
Yeah.
um I mean, I don't even think it comes down to like, well, maybe they didn't like the record or didn't like the sound of it. Maybe they didn't like my Mohawk. Maybe, who knows? I
Right.
think what it comes down to is they just lost faith in the people who were running the West Coast offices, and
Right.
they just said it's too much trouble to even look at this stuff. And they probably look at numbers and say, well, look at how much they spent on this band, and they might go one look and go, oh, well, I don't know. They're the guy with a mohawk, I mean,
Yeah.
let's not even, just shelf it,
Right. You
But I don't know.
you got signed to Elektra in '86. Now, was Todd in the band when you got signed?
Yes, yes. Um, Actually, I don't quote me on that.
Okay.
It was, I know at the point where we were forced to make the difficult decision regarding Todd and firing from the band, we were either very close or had just signed.
Okay.
But we, look, we tried everything we could. He was we because we knew him, right? He became friends with the Guns N' Roses guys, and in the end, he was kind of spending more time with them than us.
Yeah.
But we were able to identify, that he wasn't capable to handle the drugs and alcohol that was going on.
Yeah.
And he couldn't. I mean, we could tell he was on a downward spiral. But at that point, you're not thinking about a young man losing his life. I
Right.
mean, we involved his parents. We got him into rehab.
Yeah.
I don't think he lasted a week before he went AWOL and jumped on a bus and went straight to the Guns N' Roses house.
Yeah.
But everyone was advising us, from our managers and the record company people, and everyone were like, you got to lose this guy because this is your shot, and you kind of got to be perfect, right? And he was, that was one of the arguments was, oh, he never, I guess outside of, passing out and ODing on stage, he never, never ruined anything for us, but he was, because we would be at rehearsal and he would fall over, and couldn't play his bass, and we'd have to cancel rehearsal because it's like you got to carry him to the car. And he started missing meetings. We would have an important record company meeting in the morning and just be like, dude, we got to be there at 8 a.m. Just be sober.
Yeah.
After that, you can go get wasted, whatever. And he would not show up, and we couldn't find him. He was just disappearing.
Yeah.
With the guys from Guns N' Roses and kind of staying at their house and stuff. We had like 2 or 3 little apartments and little studio apartments, and they had rented this big house in the Hollywood Hills or whatever, and he just was there all the time. And it just was a very it was hard for us because it felt like, he was kind of turning his back on us and going and hanging out with these guys, and then not showing up for meetings and falling over in rehearsal. And I mean, look, we all did, right? I was using needles at the time. I was smoking heroin. I was drinking, but when to stop, and when you have responsibilities, and you keep your responsibilities going. But he wasn't one that was capable of that. He didn't have that kind of restraint. And so, yeah, in the end, it was like we gave him every opportunity. We warned him. We were like, dude, like, we're gonna kick you out of the band. Like, this is it, bro. You can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we I think it was the timing with getting Sammy, because FNA Rocks had just disbanded.
Yep.
And I think they got in touch with him, and sent him a demo tape or whatever, and he was like on the next flight over, like, yeah, let's do this.
How did you like, was there a band meeting with Todd, or how was it? How was he informed? Okay, that's it.
I don't really remember,
Sure.
but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it wasn't like that. I'm pretty sure we had every meeting and every
Yeah.
discussion and got him in rehab and
Right.
involved his parents and
Right.
everything.
Yep.
And when the decision was made, it was like, I mean, he was nowhere to be found anyway. Like I said, he wasn't
Right.
even sleeping at our apartments. He was pretty much living over there
Yeah.
at the Guns N' Roses house. And so probably management let him know.
Yeah.
And maybe if look, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I mean, do I regret what happened? Yeah. Do I wish it would have turned out differently, especially for him? Um, the fact that it worked out so quickly with Sammy was
Yeah.
kind of like he was the top of our list, right?
Of course.
And I remember we did have some open auditions
Okay.
at SRI. We SIR. We put out I don't even know what we did back then, how you notified people. There was no social media or whatever, but
Right.
we hung up a flyer or whatever. Word of mouth got around, Jetboy auditioning bass players.
Yeah.
And a bunch of guys came out. I think we had probably a dozen or so guys that came out and tried out. I remember for me, one of the coolest ones was Mike Roach from TSOL.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh,
that was during the time when TSOL became like a rock band,
yeah. Yep.
And unfortunately, he was in the same mode. He was like using heroin and like he came and he looked all fucked up and like it was like, well, we don't want to like bring another person in that's having the
Yeah.
same kind of issues.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Do
that that was
you remember finding out about Todd like in '87?
absolutely. We had already finished all the backing tracks and we were in Miami at Criteria Studio in Florida.
Yeah.
And we were mixing and finishing vocals and stuff like that. And we got the word and it was, I mean, I can't say any of us were shocked, but we were stunned.
Right.
And I mean, it's just that's the point where it really hits home, that how much we all were playing with fire back then. You know what I mean? And the irony of it too is that a few short years later, they would be forced to do the same thing with Steven Adler, and
Yeah.
literally did the same thing because it formed a big wedge between our bands,
Yeah.
because we were all very close, and then all of a sudden it became, when we fired Todd, it was like, they were trying to pull the bro code of like, you don't do that to a bro, you guys are fucked. How could you do that to him? And
Yeah.
he went downhill really fast. I remember the first time seeing him out at a club after, and he had like grown a beard and he just looked greasy and he just looked awful. And I just remember going like, oh my God, dude. And you could tell he was super depressed about it and regretting it. But at the same time, it's like, it's too late now, bro. Like we're here with Sammy Yafa from How I Rocks, bro. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, um,
And for fans probably don't understand that you had probably given him chance
well,
after
of course.
chance after
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah. Right.
You,
Yeah.
you know, you
And at that point, Todd was a very, very smart person. In fact, he graduated. I think he was one of these, like, he graduated college when he was high school age. He was like a genius. And
right.
he got a music degree from the Berkeley School of Music, like shit like that. You know what I mean? He was like a super smart, gifted person. But unfortunately, even from the very beginning, Jetboy days, he worshipped, all the worst people. Keith Richards, Johnny Thunders, just like that was his whole thing, was just like, it's like chain smoking cigarettes, drinking whiskey, and then came the needles and heroin and everything. And that was just part of his personality. Like he tried to be that. He went out of his way like that. This was the character he was creating for himself.
Yeah.
but you know, as much as we all do, right? I created the Mickey Finn character I became, but you got to know when to turn it off and on. You got to be able to turn it off and on. And look, you know, I don't fault. You know, there was some ugly years there. I think when Guns N' Roses started blowing up,
Yeah.
they would dedicate "Knocking on Heaven's Door" to Todd. And I'm not saying they badmouthed us every night, but there was definitely some comments we heard, and there was a little bit of bad mouthing that
Yeah.
went in our direction. And we just weren't friends anymore. We didn't hang anymore. You know what I mean?
Did,
I
did you
don't.
ever run into those guys or slash like at a club like after Todd? And was there ever any face-to-face conversation about
No, there was never any kind of face to face,
Okay.
like there was no almost broke out in a fight or anything like that. It was just kind of like, well, and part of that too is they were gone, man. Like when their album hit and they were gone and they were touring constantly, we got stuck. We got stuck in Hollywood for another year after the Elektra deal fell through.
Yeah.
And by the time MCA put out Feel the Shake, all the bands had already gone and they were all out on tours that we were supposed to have. You know, we just lost that momentum. And then, yeah, it just kind of, we went our separate ways.
Okay.
You know, like I said, I don't have any animosity for them. I'm sure they would say the same thing of like, hey, we were all young and dumb and we didn't realize how fragile things could be. And they didn't, you know, we were just young. They couldn't consider what we were going through and what people were telling us, our management and our record people and whatever.
Right.
You know, you could say like, you know, in retrospect, yeah, well, they did the same thing to Steven Adler later on. And I'm sure they tried everything to get him clean and it was too much of a risk and he's going to get arrested or the band's going to get in trouble. You know, anything could go wrong. And, you know, and then they you know got him to sign away his publishing and that story got even you know crazy as well. I won't say crazier because nobody died, but
Right.
you know,
Though Steven came close many times. But.
yeah, right. I saw Steven. I hadn't seen Steven, although I know we've probably played some festivals where he played as well, but I hadn't seen him at all in years. I mean, 20, 30, 40, I don't even know how many years.
Yeah.
And we played the Rock Island Festival. This was maybe I don't know, 4 years ago, something like that. And his band played and we were at the hotel and I was in my room and my guitar player came and knocked and he said, "Hey, Steven Adler's out here. He wants to say hi to you." And I went out and it was a touching moment because like we just embraced and like he let me know like he squeezed me so hard and it was one of those like almost uncomfortable and then you just give in and go, "Fuck, that's right, motherfucker." Like, and we just fucking embraced like the hardest, strongest hug and just held on to it, you know. And we didn't talk much, you know what I mean? After that, it was a short encounter, but I felt like we spoke to each other with that embrace of like, man, like all these years. I mean, it's like it would even be, you know, we would have to sit down for like a 2-day fucking spell to like even touch the surface of everything we've lived through,
Of course.
since we saw each other last. But it wasn't necessary because I think you know, I know what he's been up to, and he's, you know, we know what we're up to. I remember Jetboy played the Viper Room. This must have been somewhere around somewhere in 2006 to 2010 maybe, and Duff and Slash were at the show.
Okay.
And I remember after the show, I don't think I talked to him, but I think Billy and Fern did, and I remember Billy saying that you know, they were like blown away by our set and they were just like, "Wait a minute, like have you guys been like doing this?" And it's like, well, yeah, like, you know, like playing clubs and like we're still doing it. We have not been a consistent band by any means.
Right.
There was an over 10-year period from about 97 to about 2006, right, is when we kind of regrouped again, where we were totally not in contact with each other at all. But when we regrouped, it was like, fuck, we're still good. We put out Off Your Rocker, which was like a short EP with a couple new songs and a couple live tracks. And then of course we did Born to Fly.
Yep.
But yeah, it was cool to just have those guys kind of acknowledge and go like,
Yeah.
fuck, you guys are fucking good. And you're like, why aren't you fucking doing more? Why aren't you bigger? You know what I mean? So
Right. And with all the stuff happened with Elektra, then MCA comes. Your album should have come out in 87, probably around the same time Appetite came out, Faster, Pussycat, all these bands, but you got delayed a year. I mean, that year could have been a huge
devastating. Yeah, devastating. Yeah.
I wanted to ask this because you mentioned you had your own, you were using needles, like, and I've never used that kind of hard drug. Most people say once you get into needles that, how did you not go down that path?
I just think I reached a point. I mean, I'll tell you, I remember the point when I stopped using needles, and it was because I had I was about to go home for Christmas. I still had a girlfriend at the time in the Bay Area that we were struggling, long distance with in the first place. And I went on a binge right before I was supposed to leave, and I just had freaking needle marks down my arm, and it was just like, fuck, man, like, why did I do this? Like, there's no way I'm not going to be able to hide this from her. And then ironically, I had I was keeping iguanas. I know I mentioned to you earlier, I've gotten a pair of rhino iguanas in my office here.
Yeah.
And I had several iguanas that I kept in my apartment there in Hollywood. And I remember coming up with this idea that I was going to take I took like a dart or something, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a scratch mark, and then I'm gonna say that, like it's an iguana scratch.
Yeah.
Well, it obviously didn't work, right? It was like a scratch going through a bunch of dots going all the way down my arm, and I was just like, oh my God. And I think the night before, I was so close to going, because we ran out of drugs, and I was so close to going down to SIR. I think I even did. I was like, I'm going to go down there and grab one of these 12-string acoustics, and I'm going to go bring it to the pawn shop. And, somehow in my drug-induced mind, I was going to get the money. Like, probably a couple people told me, oh, I get money tomorrow, and you will go get it out of pawn or whatever.
Right.
But I didn't do it. I think I even went down there and I just looked at the gear, and I was just like, maybe I had come down enough where I was like thinking a little clearer. So I didn't do it. But yeah, then I was left with this task, and it was pretty devastating. I think I don't remember if I tried to pull off the iguana scratch story or not, but I'm sure if I tried, it didn't work. And I think that was it. I had just disgusted myself to a point that I just stopped. And also too, another thing I'll point out, God, I'm sounding like Charlie Sheen, the Charlie Sheen memoirs right now. If you haven't watched that yet, it's fucking intense. But I really was worse with Coke. I used to inject Coke.
Okay.
And so heroin, I dabbled, but I wanted to go fast. I didn't want to go slow. That was my thing, right? And until I tried smoking it, which actually my buddy Duff taught me how to do the first time. That was one for me at the Guns N' Roses house.
Okay.
And then I liked it because I was like, I can just puff a little bit and get a little buzz, but yeah, I don't know. The heroin thing was just kind of too intense for me, and I didn't like, being slumped over in a chair. I wanted to get high and just be super pumped up, you know.
Totally.
And so I guess the you know, withdrawals or whatever from that is not the same as detoxing from heroin, you know what I mean? I didn't go through physical sickness or whatever.
Sure.
And probably I could get a little blow and do a couple lines to kind of, you know, if I was having a rough moment. But as far as needles, that was it. And I never went back and I never used one again.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
so and somehow I didn't get hepatitis. I literally had a hepatitis panel blood work done in the last year because I had so many friends going like, dude, you got it. We all did, you know. And I'm like, but I came up clean somehow.
That's for you to come out of that and that's amazing. I mean,
yeah. I mean, you know, I honestly do believe I'm blessed. I'm a Christian. I go to church.
Good for you.
Got a beautiful wife. I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I've got a job in the hair industry working with hair products, and I get to do the band, you know, from time to time, which I would like to do more, but I'm happy to still be able to do it. Just came back from the UK tour, right, which was amazing. And still rocking and rolling.
And I appreciate you going into so much detail about this. I mean, this is
it helps. It's like therapy. You know what I mean? It's literally like therapy. That's when people get together at AA meetings and NA meetings and whatever, sharing stories and stuff helps you with the process always, because it never goes away, you know.
When Feel the Shake comes out in '88, do you feel like, because MCA gets the rights to it, you didn't have to re-record it. Do you feel like they get behind you, or are they kind of like, well, you didn't record it for us? So
yeah, it was. So, you know, they didn't want to put it out. I don't know why. But I knew that we were done fucking sitting around, you know what I mean? I mean, it took a year just to close that contract.
Yeah.
So imagine if we would have started all over, like write more songs, and then let's pick the songs and find a producer and all this. And it just seemed like such a shame. You know, we had worked with a top-notch producer. It was our first album. I mean, if we didn't put it out, our next album would not have sounded like our first album. And between you and me, Feel the Shake is not my favorite Jetboy album. I like the sound of Damnation better.
Sure.
Because we matured as musicians. My voice matured. Our songwriting skills matured.
Yeah.
But every band has a first album.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's gold, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But either way, it's the first album, you know? There's tons of bands that I love that I don't love their first album, but it's still part of the progression in the history of that band. So for that reason, I think we thought it was essential to not budge on that point. Now, in retrospect, was it the smartest thing to do? Maybe not, because I don't think they completely got behind it. I have no idea why. Maybe they just didn't like the sound of it.
Right.
They thought we were capable of better.
Okay.
But in the end, it really didn't matter because we went on a couple tours. We had more tours lined up. I think we were. What did we come off of? We came off the Cheap Trick tour.
Cheap Trick. Yep.
We did. We toured with Kicks. We toured with Striper. We toured with Cheap Trick, and then I think we were supposed to go out with Extreme.
Okay.
And then got the phone call. Hey, they're pulling your tour support. They want you to come back and start on your next record.
Okay.
And we were bummed because it was like, we did like 3 or 4 months touring, you know?
Yeah.
And which in today's world is a lot, right? But back then, you got the tour bus. You just want to keep going, one tour to the next to the next.
Yep.
And so we didn't have a choice. I mean, it was like, well, they're pulling the tour support, so you can either find some way to fund it on your own, or you know.
Yeah. You got on the soundtrack to a couple movies, The Bird, He's Out of Control. I mean, that was a big deal back then.
Right, because MCA was owned by Universal, And so we did. Yeah, that's one of the only things that actually still adds up in my BMI checks. Like with all the streaming and everything else on there, it's like pennies, and then it'll be like the Burbs. Oh, hey, the Burbs played in Turkey this month. I got $50. So those publishing deals are golden.
Right.
But yeah, for whatever reason, they gave us a short run. They put a little money into it. They
Yep.
wanted us to come and work on the next record, which we did. Um,
Did,
went great, you know.
did you guys feel like, did you feel like, hey, going into Damnation, like, all right, we got momentum? Or were you kind of like, man, I don't know if this is going to happen? I mean, what's the mood?
Well, of course, there was a ton of material we wrote that didn't go on Feel the Shake.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like we were starting from scratch. Plus, you're writing all the time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we had stuff, we had ideas, we had stuff going on. Plus, we had Sammy Yafa in the band at that point. Most of Feel the Shake was written before he joined.
Right.
Um, and so we were, yeah, I mean, we weren't happy about coming off the road and
Right.
starting on the next record, especially watching other bands continue. Like, oh, Guns N' Roses is going on tour with Aerosmith. We're coming back to LA to start writing again. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
um, and but that's what we had to do.
You, you
Um,
got a video for Feel the Shake. Now I can't. Was there any other videos put out on Feel the
No,
Shake? Okay.
no, and
I
and
didn't think
that's the thing. Even the because we had us at that point in time, the music industry they would plan out a schedule of single releases,
Yeah.
right? So it was going to be Feel the Shake, or actually, I think they might have even because it was gosh, I can't remember now, but there was definitely a plan of
Right.
single release, but they didn't. They just did the one single to radio, Feel the Shake,
Yep.
the one video. Um, but we got cracking on Damnation right away. I mean, it was apparent that we had matured and progressed. Our songwriting and our talents had all progressed. I started playing harmonica and got really good at it. Billy got better at slide guitar. We just became more seasoned musicians and better songwriters. And and I think at the same time too, we started to evolve more like a lot of bands did, right? I mean, if you think about you look at a band like Poison from when they started blowing up on the Sunset Strip and how they looked and how they sounded, and then how fast everybody got a little heavier, a little grittier. It was still hair metal or whatever you want to call it,
Right.
but it was a little less pretty and a little more gritty, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so,
From 86 to 90, the look and the sound really
yeah,
evolved.
yeah, and we were all on board with that. It was what felt natural to us as well. I mean, if you look at the album spread from the Damnation CD booklet, there's a poster in the middle, and if you look at us there versus the first record, it's like, wow, you could see. So we felt comfortable with everything that was going on with our look and our sound and everything. And the production of that record was phenomenal. That was a big difference too, right? Because Feel the Shake, everything was still analog. It was still tape, right?
Right.
It was still splicing. And then with Damnation, it was the beginning of the digital era.
Okay.
So like for instance, with the vocals, every line, I mean, you would always try to sing through a song, but ultimately you come back and for every line of the song, I would do 3 takes,
Okay.
move on to the next line, and I would sing it 3 times. And the next line, and then you sit down and you say, okay, which one? The first one, the second one, the third one, and then you splice them together. And it was cool to see that digital process happen.
Yeah.
Whereas the first record, there's a guy there with the razor blade and the tape splicing machine, and it's all that manual splicing.
Right.
So that was as far as the recording music industry, that was a big change that was taking place as well. And so I think because of that, and Wayne Barron and John Purdell were amazing Um, amazing team,
Yeah.
producers, but really one was a little more engineer minded and one was a little more production minded.
Oh,
Um, and they had a second engineer as well. And the team was great. And the record to me is that record should have gone big, right?
totally.
Because I mean,
Totally.
no one knows our ballad off that record. Too late. I mean, it never saw the light of day. If we had followed the progression on that, which I think was supposed to be evil and then stomp it down to the bricks and then the ballad. But once again, as luck would have it, and why it didn't matter ultimately, right? Because you could say like, oh, should we have not release Feel the Shake and just gone into maybe they would have got more behind it, but probably the same thing would have happened, which is Sony Music came in, bought MCA Universal,
Yeah.
and that was a big shock because that was a huge, the offices were huge. I mean, you're talking about rows of desks and cubicles and offices everywhere. And when we came off the road and came to the record company to have kind of our final meeting with our A&R guy, it was like deserted. I mean, you're talking about an office that was bustling with 50 to 100 people, anytime we had been there, and now it's like empty desks and like they literally just cleaned house. And once again, I think some bands did not get the boot. I want to say, was it maybe Trickster? I think
Right.
was on
Trickster
MC.
was on MCA. Yeah.
I don't think it made much difference for them either, but we were shelved, I think, because they spent a lot of money on us. And so it's like, who are the ones making these decisions that you don't
Yeah.
trust any of your people? My mom would go to the grocery store and have, she'd have a stack of magazines every month with Jetboy, and not a bad review amongst the one of them. I
Right.
challenge anyone out there to find a magazine, any of those, Hit Parade or Rock Beat, Rock Scene,
Yep.
Rip, any of them. All of our reviews were always positive.
Yeah.
And it's like, how did they just go, nope, I don't see it. We spent too much already. Well, yeah, you spent a shit ton, so just see it through.
Yes.
What I mean? Keep us on the road, and
That happened with both of your albums, like label shakeups and
yeah,
it
right.
just, I hate to say it, but it was just
And that
it
was
was
it.
unfair.
At the second time, um, our A&R guy is the one who signed Nirvana,
Okay.
and so I think when this second record deal fell through, I think the writing was on the wall, and I think only the bands that were already big and established, like Guns N' Roses and Poison, LA Guns, you could say Faster Pussycat and whatnot, but have they didn't have that impact.
Yep.
But things were changing and changing fast.
You,
And so our I mean our management, our agent, nobody knew what to do. They were kind of like, well, guys, go get a job. You know what I mean? And they're like, I don't think you want to like be working at a coffee shop in Hollywood when you're still trying to like save
Yep.
your careers.
Yep.
So I think the decision was we'll move back to San Francisco. We all had family still.
Yep.
So it's like, hey, we're gonna keep working on this. We're not gonna give up. But I don't think the idea was to get a job on Melrose
right.
at the same time as you're still trying to save face and keep your
Yeah.
career going. So we went back to San Francisco and kind of regrouped, and everyone was crushed, and we didn't know what to do. And
Did you even get to tour Damnation?
yeah, we did. Yeah, and I'm thinking I had told you we were going to go out with Extreme. I think that was the Damnation tour.
Okay. Okay.
That's I think that's the one we toured with Cheap Trick.
Okay.
Feel the Shake, I think we toured with Kicks and we toured with Striper.
The Striper. Yep. That's right.
We did we toured with Cheap Trick, which was great because it was their first #1 hit in their whole
The
career.
Flame.
For the Flame. And then we were supposed to go on a tour with Extreme after that, and they pulled the plug.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just
It-
the Evil video, that was it there. And
yep.
you realize when the Evil video came out, MTV would not play that video in daytime rotation. Be specifically because of my Mohawk, and because they told our management and record label specifically that the singer looks too crazy and too evil. And
Wow.
and then literally it was like a year later, you've got freaking Alan Manson on there, like, literally,
Right.
it was just, they weren't ready for it yet.
Right.
They liked the song, they thought it was catchy, they just said specifically, no, we'll do it on Headbangers Ball, but we're not going to put it in daytime rotation because the singer is just too scary looking.
You mentioned too late. I mean, this is the time when bands were breaking
Yeah,
because of the ballad. I felt like Too Late was gonna be that song.
yeah, totally. Yep. I mean, look at Kicks. Look what happened with Kicks with Don't Close Your Eyes.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what what was your opinion when grunge started happening? I mean, were you like, hey, oh, hey, I like this, or were you like, oh shit, that's
Well, I mean, I remember the first time I heard Nirvana, I liked it because I liked the sound of his voice.
yeah,
Um, I didn't, I think kind of like the whole ripped jeans, combat boots, and the flannel shirt tied around your waist was kind of a turnoff for me.
yeah,
It just felt kind of poserish, and then to hear those bands talk about how they were anti look,
yeah,
you know what I mean? But it's like, do you realize you have a totally cliche look? It wasn't
totally,
cliche at the time, but it was, because I came from the punk rock scene, and that's how a lot of punk rock kids dressed.
totally.
Ripped up jeans, combat boots or Dr. Martens, and a flannel shirt around your waist and a t-shirt. But they
Yep,
didn't have long hair. They
yep,
had shaved heads or whatever. That was the HB look.
yep,
Um, so I just thought these grunge guys are not, they're saying they're anti-look and they're anti-fashion and whatever, but they're basically taking the look of a punk rock kid and wearing it with long hair. Um, but yeah, I mean, I still, I'm not a huge fan of the genre. There's some bands I liked that came out of it. I've always been a big Soundgarden fan.
yeah,
And mostly for me, it's Chris Cornell, the vocals.
yeah,
To me, it's like, I don't care what a band looks like or even what the whole band sounds like or the songs are like. If I don't like the sound of the singer's
yeah.
voice, I'm just not going to be into it. Uh,
Um,
and of course, Alice in Chains. We had actually played with them a couple times, and they were super nice guys. Yeah, a lot of those guys had their old glam looks too. Even Pantera.
yes,
A lot of people don't realize there's some Pantera stuff out there with Diamond Daryl instead of Dimebag Daryl in the old days. And that's why we became friends with those guys too. They were not pretentious.
yeah,
There were some metalers and metal bands that I think made fun of bands like us. Um, even though all of us were into metal before we got into glam or punk or anything, go back to Black Sabbath and freaking Judas Priest and whatever.
right.
But the really cool bands got us, and still do, and still do. I see people to this day that you would never expect that will go like, oh fuck yeah, I remember when Feel the Shake came out. I was working in a record store and we used to play it all day long.
Yeah, yep.
Uh,
What was there a point where you guys decided, okay, Jetboy is going to be no more?
Yes. So what we decided was that we were going to change the name. At that point, we had Bill Graham Management Company. So Bill Graham, if for people that are not familiar, was one of the biggest music promoters in Northern California. He put on the original shows, Day on the Green, Monsters of Rock. Those were all Bill Graham productions. You're talking stadium shows and arena shows. Every rock and metal um, big level stuff that happened in the Bay Area was Bill Graham Productions.
That's right.
He had a management company, and our manager at the time was a guy, I think his name was Ray Etzler. He was actually Santana's manager for a while. He took charge, and we came really close to a lot of deals, independent, lower level deals.
Sure.
And multiple times it just, something went wrong with the label or whatever. And then it just got stagnant. We were just running out of options. And I think it was just, that was the consensus, was that, Jetboy's old news. People don't want old news. They want something new.
Yeah.
We had already gone through a couple lineup changes. Sammy Yafa had left actually before Damnation came out. Our drummer had left, and so we decided to change the name. And also we kept writing. You're always writing music, and we became heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. And so we decided to change the name to Mind Zone. And Mind Zone was actually very successful in California.
Okay.
And we opened for every club and theater level band that came through, from Motorhead, Biohazard, Body Count, like Machine Head. We just were on every metal festival, every metal band that came through. We were able to get on the bill, and people were digging our stuff. We did it all ourselves. We made our own designs, made our own shirts, made our own demo tapes that we would sell at shows and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
once again, we started getting a lot of interest, but I just think it was a tumultuous time in the music industry. And we came very close to signing deals with, like, I can't remember which ones, but there was like Metal Blade and like there was a ton of indie metal labels that we had contracts in front of us. We were like so close, and then we would get a call. Turns out the label just went bankrupt. They closed their doors. Like, kidding me. You know what I mean? So that happened several times, and we kept hashing away, and back and forth in our Chevy Suburban, punk rocking it, doing shows, making recordings. Some of that music we created in Mind Zone are on some of the Jetboy after releases on Paris Records and a couple others. Some great music. I mean, my voice was at its all-time peak to be singing the high notes and the low notes and the grovel. My wife thinks we sound exactly like Pantera. Definitely influence you can hear in there. I think we had our own thing going, but I think it just came to, it just kind of got old. You know what I mean? Like we were getting nowhere, and we're still living together in the city, sharing apartments, and doing our thing. And I met a girl and decided I've had enough, and I bailed, moved down to San Diego, got married, got into electronic music for a little bit. I was a DJ for about 10 years. I was producing drum and bass, hard step drum and bass, kind of everything, rave stuff, trance and house and stuff like that. Marriage lasted a year or so, and then I fucked off to Hawaii and just went on. This was my 10-year spell of just like finding my way through the world. I had my own nightclubs in Hawaii. I was DJing. I became a really popular DJ.
Wow.
Produced a bunch of music. I worked with other DJs from around the country and produced some music. And then around 2005 or 6, also had a run-in with the law. That was, I won't go into that, but it was a couple felonies.
Okay.
And drug stuff.
Okay.
And then, Billy started hitting me up again, kind of out of the blue. And he was like, hey, Yeah, you remember Brian Pereira? You know, he's around back in the day, and he's got this label, Cleopatra Records, and he wants to he wants to get us back together and like record some stuff. And he's putting on a big event at the Key Club, and he wants us to play. And um, so I was like, it was the end of that wave I was riding in Hawaii at that time. It was time to skedaddle out of there. Just too many uh broken relationship girlfriends everywhere I went, and then the drug offense thing in court, and I'm like, time for a change. So Billy got me to move back to California, and that by 2006 we had reunited the band and we started recording again. I moved down to LA and I was staying with Drew, the owner of Lip Service Clothing. Again, my good friend who did so much for me. And if you remember, Lip Service was the
Yes.
rock and roll brand
Yes.
of clothes to wear. Um, and so I was staying with him. I started working for his company in the sales department. And then we were back at it again. So, and that's been kind of the progression that has continued till today.
This might be kind of backtracking, but you mentioned Sammy Yafa leaving during Damnation, and I was just gonna ask, did you feel like he fit in with the band? And I
Yeah.
say that because you guys were brand new and he'd already been with Hanoi Rocks for all those years. Like,
When Sam came over from day one, he was one of the boys,
okay,
one of us.
okay,
And by that, what I mean by that is me and Billy and Sam shared a studio apartment on the corner of Hollywood and La Brea,
okay,
or Hollywood and Fairfax. I can't remember now, but it was a studio apartment.
yeah,
In that studio apartment, there was a TV, like on a milk crate. There was three mattresses, not mattress and box spring, just a mattress. One, two, three on the floor, and there was a little, you know how those apartments are, little tiny kitchenette,
yep,
right? And we were happy as could be.
okay,
He came in at the time where it was like every day we were either rehearsing and writing or recording demos or working on pre-production, getting fitted for custom leather pants. Every night was going to Hollywood parties with the Chili Peppers and Depeche Mode, and I mean, uh, Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats was at the studio one day, came in, started jamming with us. We had met with Paul Stanley from Kiss because he was considered as a producer. So it was literally every day was, glory days. And every night would be us with the TV on Star Trek. We turned Sammy into a huge Star Trek fan,
right,
and we would get those Tall House cookies, the cookie dough,
yeah,
and that was it. We had our bongs, we would smoke weed, and we would make Tall House cookies, and our refrigerator, like I said, probably had a block of cheese and some tortillas, and most of the time we were getting food provided or getting taken out to lunch or dinner or whatever. In between, we ate whatever we could scrape together. And Sammy just was not pretentious at all. He just was one of the boys, and we just shared stories. And I think he was enjoying getting to know Americans and Hollywood as much as we were learning everything about people from Finland and Sweden and Europe and whatnot. So it was a beautiful thing. I just think kind of like if you go through a breakup or a divorce, most people will advise you to don't jump into a relationship again right away because you need time to process. I think that's kind of what happened with him with Jetboy.
okay,
And there wasn't time for everybody to kind of figure out where they were going. Um, Obviously, Andy went off and started his own things because was more of a leader at that point.
Yep.
Nasty Suicide went and became a pharmacist or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think when Michael Monroe started to regroup and reached out to Sam and said, "Hey, bro, like, why don't you come? Like, this isn't you. You're not a Hollywood guy. Come back, So
Yeah.
I think that's what he needed to do for him. It was like, he came, he had his fun, but ultimately maybe wasn't necessarily the right fit for him.
Okay.
Or it was authentic while it was happening.
Sure.
But I just think the temptation to go back with Mike. I mean, Mike was everybody's hero, right? Mike Monroe is such a natural talent. He's one of these people you kind of hate, right? Because like I see him there.
Yeah.
He taught himself how to play saxophone. I mean, who the fuck teaches himself how to play saxophone?
Yeah.
Like how? Like there's the whole mouth aperture, and then the all the fucking, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But he's that kind of guy, self-taught,
Yeah.
just a fucking powerhouse.
Yeah.
Crazy, and I think Sam, as well as, many people really looked up to him and always had, and the opportunity came to say, like, either stay with this or go here. I don't think it was that he wasn't proud of Damnation, because he did record all of Damnation with us. But, maybe it was Finland calling him back home. Maybe he had his fill of Hollywood.
Sure.
And it sucked for us, but I called on one of my old punk rock buddies, Charles Norman, who was from the San Jose punk rock scene. And he had grown his hair. He had kind of gone in a similar direction as me, after the punk rock years. He'd grown his hair long, and he was an accomplished musician. And Charles he's played with Frank Black from the Pixies, and he's recorded with tons of people. He was really advanced. He was, teaching us how to, use the sampler for our drums to get the sound effects. And he was really came in, probably one of the few people that really can play Sammy's bass parts correctly, especially with a song like Evil. Like if you see Sammy play Evil, it's got those long fingers, and Charles was that way too. Tall, lanky, So they had that golden locks, you'll see in the Evil video. So it worked out pretty painlessly for us.
Yeah.
And again, right? Would it have made a difference, if Sam didn't leave? Would MCA have kept us on? Would things have worked out differently? Probably not. Who knows?
Right. You mentioned a drug offense, and I'm not asking you to go, but is that all in the past, or
yeah,
not to pry, but
yeah, it's hard to say you were, in the DJ scene for 10 years and didn't go through drugs and ecstasy and then it became, I had my own clubs. When you're supplying the party and you're supplying DJs and you're playing the party, it just worked out that way too. So
sure. I went through my own scene too, so I get it. You put out an EP and you mentioned it, Off Your Rocker, and the song Going Down Above the Clouds, I thought rocks as hard as anything you guys ever did.
Yeah, those, and that was like me and Billy and Fern not being together or writing any music in over 10 years. And we had one session together where I think I was living in North Hollywood, and Billy and Fern came down, and we had like one day to sit around, and they had a couple licks, and we flowed and we wrote those songs. I think there was three songs on that EP, or two. Going Down Above the Clouds, Perfectly Wrong, another good one.
Yep.
Those were in that, because I've always felt like with our songwriting, we're somewhere comfortably between like AC/DC Aerosmith, but with that sassy, punky edge in
Yes.
there as well.
Yes.
But those songs are classic classic rock influences really come through on those
Yeah.
songs.
Totally.
The groove metal kind of stuff, and yeah, great songs, actually, that the song "Perfectly Wrong" appears in the background in a movie called How Do You Know?
Okay.
It has Owen Wilson. It has Robert De Niro is in it, and what's the blonde actress name from Legally Blonde?
Reese Witherspoon.
Witherspoon. And it's in the background in a scene where they're at a bar, it's in the background at a bar.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny because like just recently when I got my BMI statement, there was some stuff that showed up on there that I didn't know. Like we were in an episode of Ugly Betty.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the TV show, and it's weird because like I'm like, how do I not know about this? And it just appears on the BMI statement. I mean, it's like pennies, you know what I mean? Most of that stuff is not much.
Sure.
There was another one that was on there too. I think it was like one of these crime shows or whatever. So yeah, the music's floating around out there, and
Yeah.
publishing companies can do stuff, and Cleopatra, right? They're always working angles with stuff as well.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget my good buddy Danny Dangerous from the Purple Haired Zeros. Remember the Zeros?
Yes, I remember the
He wouldn't
Zeros.
forgive me if I don't mention. So Danny and I did a band,
Cold Blue Rebels.
Cold Blue Rebels. Yeah.
It's on. Yep. Go ahead.
So
Because I
from
was gonna
about
ask.
2010 to 2000, well, no, it must have been before that. 2009 maybe to 2014
Okay. Yep.
when I moved back to Hawaii. We we both discovered we had a love for rockabilly and psychobilly music.
Yep.
And I got really into psychobilly for a short time there. And so we decided, well, he was actually the instigator, but I'm like, well, bro, you got an upright bass, and he's like, dude, if you make a psychobilly band with me, he's like, I'll go get an upright bass and I'll fucking take lessons. I'll learn how to fucking play it.
Right.
I was like, all right, dude, you're on. And it was me and him that started writing the first batch of songs. And we got Spaz Drastic, who was the drummer in the Glamour Punks, on drums. Yeah. And we actually auditioned Joe Normal, who was the lead guitar player from the Zeros. We auditioned him 2 times because the first time he came in and it wasn't really a fit. But I think he was like, this is cool. I want to be part of this. And he just made it a point, because Joe's a phenomenal guitar player. He just made it a point to go and like spend a month and just fucking, Brian Setzer his brain, right? So it's like he got the Fender amps, he figured it all out.
Yeah.
Got his guitars sounding that way, got a bunch of Gretches, and came back, and it was just like, holy shit, this is the guy, So that was another story. I mean, it was almost like Jetboy. Like we wrote 6 songs.
Yeah.
And because we were so well connected, people wanted us like right away. Like we're like, yeah, we're gonna do this zombie thing. We're gonna wear makeup and dress like zombies. And my wife now at the time, we're gonna have zombie go-go dancers on stage, and we're gonna have a coffin. Like Danny's like, I know a guy, I'll get us a coffin. My wife had a hearse. So everything just came together like lightning fast. And
did your wife star in one of your music videos?
yeah, she's in pretty much all the Cold Rebels videos.
Yeah.
Her, and then our other friend Letty, who actually does photography and editing for the company, my hair company, Don Juan. We from when we played our first show, we just got bombarded with offers. And I want to say we probably played a half a dozen shows or more, and we only had 6 songs. And then it was like, all right, like we got to learn a cover at least, because we would play 6 songs and people would be like stomping their feet and like we're trying to load out going like, no, really guys, like we don't know any more songs, you know? So then I suggested to bring in Folsom Prison Blues, which we had played as a Jetboy standard as a cover for years.
Yeah.
So then we had 7 songs. And then it was just like at a certain point, after our first 6 or 8 shows, we just had to stop and we're like had to tell everybody like, sorry, we're not booking any shows this month. We have to write more songs, you know.
Right.
And then we wrote the rest of the record. The first album is Blood, Guts, and Rock and Roll, and I think it's 10 songs or 12 songs, and that was every song we had written. So as opposed to like, well, let's write 40 songs and pick out. It was like, these are our songs. We went in there, we recorded it live in one night.
Right.
We did the whole album in one night, mixed everything. And we never even mastered it, actually. Just ran it through a mastering suite or whatever. So the production on that one is not great.
Right.
And then we were up and running. And we hooked up with John from Horror High Records. He was close with Wednesday 13 from the Murder Dolls.
Yeah.
So we started jumping on those tours. And we went from like an opening package where there was 3 bands. And then the next tour, we were the support band or the middle band. And then this next tour, we were the support band. And I think we did 3 full coast to coast tours, including Canada with Wednesday 13, which was awesome. Like just that whole, like, they were like horror metal and we were horror psychobilly.
Yep.
Sounds kind of weird, but it totally worked.
Totally.
That's where I met Tucker from the Biters. And now he's Tuck in the Restless Hearts.
That's right.
He actually sings on one of the covers on the new Jetboy record. But that's where I met him. That was a cool one too, because it was like Colby Rebels, Biters, and Wednesday 13. And it was good because it was a very young crowd. So the kids were just like, you know, this is cool. I don't care what it is. I don't care that this is different than this and this is different than that, you know. 3 bands that had nothing to do with each other musically, but all kicked ass, and we blew people away every night. So
what happened with Cold Blue Rebels, or how does that come to an end?
So,
And
the same thing too, right? It's like when we weren't on tour, we were playing every weekend.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where you just stop. Like we didn't rehearse anymore.
Yeah.
You know, we'd put out an EP or we'd put out a single and we'd, you know, do a little thing here, do a little thing there, but we were just constantly working, but making no money.
Right.
You know, like it you know, that hobby that pays for itself, which is great, but it's like after 5 years of it, just nonstop. I just think it reached a point of burnout. My wife and I had gotten married.
Yeah.
And we started planning to have a family because we wanted to have kids. And we realized we didn't have any family in LA. But she had a big family in Hawaii where she's born and raised.
Yeah.
So we're like, you know, let's move to Hawaii and start planning our family, you know, because you need family to start a family, you know.
Totally.
So that was it, you know. We had intended to kind of maybe try and keep it going, but it fizzled pretty quickly. And
sure,
I think since I've been back, because I'm in Vegas now for 5 years, Danny and I have aspired to do it again.
Yeah.
But I just ultimately feel like it's one of those things that it was awesome. And sometimes you can't recreate it again. Joe doesn't want to do it.
Okay.
We could find a new guitar player. Spaz would do it. But you know, it's like, you know, any good psychobilly guitar players?
Right.
You know, then there's the whole thing, you know, like if Joe would do it, then the 3 of them live in LA. They could get together and rehearse. I could rehearse here, you know, then we could just play shows once in a while.
Yeah.
But if we bring in a new guitar player, then it's work, right? And he's got to learn the songs. We got to all get together, rehearse, and it's a whole mission, which, you know, right now between doing Jetboy once in a while, my full-time job in the hair product industry, and, you know, being a homeowner and a husband and having 2 young kids, and, you know, it's like, my time is sparse. So,
Of course.
but by all, that was a band that we did tons of videos. You know, there's tons of footage out there from all
Yeah.
the tours. All
Yeah.
of it's super cool, super fun. The music's great, and you know, even the last Jetboy record, Born to Fly, I think we did 5 or 6 videos for that record. That was all done on a budget, out of pocket, pennies, you know, to friends and people who just wanted to be creative and have fun, right?
Yeah. And that was put out on Frontiers. And
Yeah,
if you haven't listened to Born to Fly, I highly recommend that you check it out because
yeah, it's good.
it's a fantastic record.
Another one again. We wrote that in about a month. We wrote it and recorded it. I want to say in 2 months.
Okay.
Um, I was living in Hawaii still. Billy and I sent music files back and forth. We didn't write a ton of songs. Pretty much every song we wrote from that batch is on the record,
Right.
outside of maybe 1 or 2. And we did no pre-production. Actually, we did 1 day of pre-production where I flew to Billy's house in San Francisco. I sang the songs for the first time in his house, and we just did a demo recording.
Okay.
Then the next stop was LA to record at with Rick Parker and gosh, I'm forgetting his name right now. But yeah, it was, you know, another home studio recording, you know what I mean? So, you know, those labels, Frontiers, they put up some money to
Yep.
record, but they don't promote anything. They don't,
Right.
you know, they're not investing. It's just here's the money, record it. They gave us money for 1 video, and
Yeah.
then the rest of the videos we just paid out of pocket and had friends that wanted to be creative and have fun.
And then you put out a covers album called Crate Boy in
It's
2020.
crate digging.
Crate Digging, excuse me.
Yep.
Crate
Yep.
Digging. And there's
Yeah.
a ton of like Fire and Rain, the lead
Yeah.
Shuffle Eastbound and Down.
Yeah.
Like how
It's
that,
eclectic, you know, it's Brian Pereira from Cleopatra. It was his idea, and he picked a lot of the songs. I picked a couple, Billy picked a couple. It's a really eclectic blend. Some people might say it's yacht rock because there's definitely some what you would consider yacht rock songs on there, but that wasn't our goal.
yeah.
Our goal really was to pick songs that we loved when we were kids, that we grew up on.
Yeah.
You know, but before you became cool and got into, you know, all the classic rock and Kiss and, you know, the cool shit that eventually we would all, I mean, of course we could do I had a rock song and a Clash song and a Kiss song or whatever, but that would be completely typical.
Yeah.
So these are songs that you remember, like sitting in the station wagon with your mom, going to the store and hearing a song come on the radio. It was a lot of those songs.
Yeah.
And I think Brian, you know, had some ulterior motives for picking certain songs. Some of it was kind of unplanned because like we did the Rainbow song.
Yeah. Since you've been gone.
Since You've Been Gone, I had no idea that was going to be like in the commercial for the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I don't even think Brian knew. But literally, like the week that we released that as the first single was the week that the commercial came on for the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that song was in there. So I think that was the idea Brian had, was he was trying to pick songs that not a lot of people have covered, or there's not a lot of releases out there with cover versions of it.
Right.
Because it is that way. People heard that song, they searched Since You've Been Gone. Well, oh, who's this one by this band? Who's this one by this band? Especially if you don't know the song.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what brought it all together. It's definitely eclectic.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's gonna love every single song on there, but I think without really talking about how we're gonna approach this musically, it developed into its own style. So like all the songs do sound like Jetboy,
Yeah.
and they sound like modern day Jetboy. The vocal treatment I gave them is basically the same.
Yeah.
On all the songs. It's a little heavy, a little gritty.
Mm-hmm.
And so from like Fire and Rain, you know what I mean? So it's a little bit of that folky, but then it gets hard and heavy. So like all the songs kind of do that, you know. Dancing in the Moonlight, we didn't have to do too much too.
Yeah.
And just so you know, this is one of the coolest things, which probably no one will ever hear about except from listening to your show. So on Dancing in the Moonlight by Thin Lizzy features myself and Tuck Smith sings a verse. And then also we have Danko Jones on there.
Oh yeah.
Things on it as well. And also Sammy Yafa played the bass line on that song.
Okay.
So talk about a star-studded, cool-ass fucking lineup on a song. Like, it doesn't get much cooler than that.
I love Danko. I love Tuck Smith. I love what he's doing now.
Exactly. And then that reminds me too, we had Chris Shiflett played a solo on Born to Fly.
All right. Okay.
He played a solo on one of our songs there. So we know people, you know.
Oh yeah. Was there a period, and I don't know if you wanted, but like where the guys wanted to tour Europe, you didn't want to?
Yeah. That was one of the downfalls in there. You know, it was a weird time in the band. That lineup was with Jess and Jesse, a couple of musicians from Fresno that played bass and guitar, and it was me and Bill and Fern. And I think Billy was starting his journey to sobriety at that time. Fern, I think, also was having some sobriety issues, struggles, and I was living life at that point. You know, I was still partying. I was doing a little blow. I was working at lip service, but I was very organized. You know, I had my girlfriend. I had an apartment. I was doing trade shows all over the world. I was, you know, working a 9-to-5 job, you know, like modeling for lip service sometimes. Like I had a lot going on, and I felt strong and good in life. We had a manager at the time that was a little divisive.
Okay.
And I didn't really like him. I never liked him, actually. And they started talking about doing this tour in Europe. Billy was connecting with a promoter that had brought over his band, American Heartbreak, that he did after Jetboy.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know, I kind of talked to my boss about it a little bit. And, you know, I was like, I mean, it's going to be like a month, you know what I mean? He was like, well, yeah, you know, maybe you can find some shops over there, do some business or whatever. He wasn't opposed to it, but I also knew, like, I'm like, the pay structure I had set up at that time was like it was kind of like a salary versus commission.
Yep.
But most months I was not meeting. I wasn't selling as much as I was getting paid. So like, I had reservations about, you know, just bailing on my job. And then they started putting this whole tour together. And when the contracts all came back, it was like not enough money. You know what I mean? And I was the first one going like, hey guys, like this is not, we're not going to make money, but we're not going to, I mean, we've got to pay for our flights. We got to pay for a van and gas and meals and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Billy's attitude was, well, hey, look, you know, we've got a few months before this. Everybody starts stashing some money away and we'll help cover the cost to do this tour. And I was like, I just wasn't into that. I'm like, I have a job. I pay my bills. I have a girlfriend. We split the costs. I can't, you know, I mean, it's not like I had a huge savings account or something and kind of living check to check. And I was living comfortably, but I'm like, I'm not going to take a month off my job to have to pay. I'm like, that's basically what you're saying is we're going to go on vacation, but it's going to be a working vacation and we're going to have a fun playing our Jetboy music, which sounds rad, but I can't afford that. I have a job. I have responsibilities.
Yep.
And unless you can show me the numbers where this isn't going to cost me anything, right, then I say we cancel it. And they were just adamant about like, no, it's too late. We've already agreed to this. And if we're going to burn a bridge with this promoter and all this stuff. And I'm just like, well, who agreed to do these shows before we saw the numbers and the guarantees? I want to say some of the shows were like 50, $50 or $150 or something like that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's like, what the fuck are you thinking? And it was all through Europe. It wasn't just like what I just did the UK run, which is, I think it was 15 or 1600 miles I covered in 9 days.
Right.
This was going to France and Germany and Italy and like all over. So that's when the manager really started putting pressure. And yeah, they basically were just like, okay, well, hey, would you be okay if we got another singer to do this tour? Meanwhile, I had already had Cold Blue Rebels going as well. It was the early stages, but it was up and running.
Yep.
Maybe that had something to maybe there was some jealousy there or something. I don't know. But I said no, absolutely not. I'm like, you guys want to get another singer, go get another singer, but that'll be the last you'll see of me and Jetboy.
Right.
And
Right.
much to my surprise, they said, okay, well, we're going to get another singer and do this tour. And so I said, all right, well, I'm out. This isn't just so you know, this isn't just for the tour. You get another singer for this tour, I am out. I'm done with Jetboy.
Right.
And so they did. It was stupid. I don't, you could ask Billy or, I mean, I mean, they didn't even get a good singer, you know what I mean? It's like they got this guy from Fresno. I don't know. I've never met him. I saw videos. I heard him. He was, I mean, I don't know what would have hurt worse if they got someone like amazing with a better voice than me, or,
Right.
but I was just like, really? This guy, this is the guy you're picking to go represent our band in Europe. Like,
Right.
yeah.
So what happened after that?
So, I did Cold Blue Rebels for a while. There was some scandalous shit that went on with that manager where he literally started to try to blackmail me.
Okay.
And he was threatening to go to the state of Hawaii probation department and tell them that I left and I wasn't supposed to leave the state and I was living in California, and he was making all kinds of nasty threats. And in return, they wanted me to basically sign away my rights to Jetboy or using the Jetboy name on my own. And they were like, but we'll allow you to use the name Mickey Finn, but you have to sign this that says you're not allowed to use the name Jetboy in anything you do or whatever. And if not, he was like, I've got a friend in the Justice Department. I'm gonna get all this shit. And I was just like, I went to Billy and Fern and was just like, really, guys, this is what it's come to,
Right.
And it dissolved, and he never did that, and I never signed anything, and we kind of went our separate ways for a bit.
Yep.
And then yeah, like did Cold Blue Rebels. Billy was busy with his guitar company. I don't remember it being too devastating. It kind of just all of that just kind of fizzled out.
Okay.
Eventually.
So did you guys work everything out between you and Billy and Fern?
Well, we the last time Billy and Fern and I played together was just before the pandemic.
Okay.
The year before the pandemic, we went to the UK and we did 3 shows over there.
Okay.
We played at Hard Rock Hell Sleaze Fest for the first time with LA Guns. And Billy and I got along swimmingly. Things were starting to heat up politically. And I remember it being there was some weirdness with Fern, and we weren't seeing eye to eye, and
Sure.
it was a good trip. We had fun. There was, I think I don't know. Fern has been MIA for a while.
Yeah.
He chose to kind of retire from the band, and
Yep.
yeah, we actually asked him to come back and do the Rose Tattoo show we did at the Whiskey. We asked him and Ron, the original drummer, they both declined. But yeah, I mean, look, we're that kind of band. We've had our ups and downs and ups and downs,
Yeah.
and we're still in touch. I don't talk to Fern. He's a very private person. I
Sure.
think he does best. This is just my feeling, is that he does best when he's not in Jetboy. It's like I feel like when in the times over the last 20 years when he's in, he's he I don't know, he gets his hopes up so much, and it's like he's so into it, and then I think it's hard. Like for me, I just did a UK tour, and it's like I come back on Friday and Monday, I'm like taking the kids to school and back at my job and back at my computer, and it's like I've just been signing autographs and taking pictures with people for 2 weeks. But I think he had a hard time, being the rock star and
Yeah.
then not being the rock star, and
Yeah.
so
I feel like I should know this. I feel bad that I don't, but was this 2 week UK tour, was that as Jetboy?
yes, it
Okay,
was.
okay.
Even though it was just me,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
due to finances, I hired guys over there.
Yep.
Rob Lane, who played bass for us the last time we went to the UK, he plays with Bullet Boys when they go over there. There's a lot of musicians over there, like because
Yep.
this is the reality of it,
Yep.
right? Is sometimes if you want to get places and do things, you can't. There's not enough money to buy 5 plane tickets plus all the work
Absolutely.
and meals and all that stuff. So I have a band here in Vegas. I mean, it's me and Billy are the last two,
Yep.
but Billy's so busy with Buck Cherry,
Buck
and it's
Cherry.
really hard for him to commit to shows. So I've got several musicians I work with here in Vegas, and for the UK run, I almost wasn't going to do it, but Rob really put everything together. He got Mickey Richards on drums. He plays with Jizzy Pearl when Jizzy goes over there. And then Ben Marsden, he's in the Wild Hearts.
Yeah.
And so we did it as a 4 piece, which I had never done before. It was amazing. You get great players playing great songs
Yeah.
with a good front man. And we put on a show every night. I mean, every night I left the stage dripping sweat, messy,
Yeah.
and we had great merch sales and people were stoked. So um, hopefully I'll get to keep doing it, and carry the flame. I talked to Billy about possibly doing like Mickey Finn, the voice of Jetboy or whatever, but he's like, why? You know, Usually that happens when people don't get along with their bandmates anymore and there's some
Yeah.
kind of legal fight over the name.
Yeah.
But who cares? I mean, there's bands out there with no original members or like just the bass player or whatever. So it's like at least you get to see Jetboy with the original singer
Yeah.
singing the songs you want to hear.
Totally.
And if someday Fern decides to jump back on board, or Billy gets freed up from his busy schedule with Buck Cherry, we'll the more the merrier. Sammy wants to come back on board, the door's always open, but at least in the meantime it's important for us and for me to keep the name active, keep the flame burning.
Absolutely.
Usually when we get busier we start getting more offers, because obviously it's nice to do the big festivals, it's nice to do the cruises, right? I would love to do the Monsters of Rock cruise again.
Totally.
God, I would probably do it for free just to be able to like take my wife. I brought my wife last time. It was super fun.
Sure.
But like when we have long stagnant periods, then we don't get offers.
Right.
And right now we put out the record, the covers record, and this show was actually booked like, I mean, the UK tour, we built the tour around the Hard Rock Hell Festival, the Sleaze Fest.
Yeah.
And that was booked like a year and a half ago. So
Right.
we'll see what happens for 2026. Hopefully we'll get some offers, and theoretically I could be playing a lot more between Vegas, LA, San Diego, San Francisco. I mean, there's enough territory to play locally.
Sure.
I've got guys to do it. I just just need to make it happen.
I heard you say in another interview there was talk about trying to do a proper documentary. Is that
Oh,
anything?
there's been talk off and on for years. In fact, for a minute there with our guitar player Jimmy Romero, who's here in Vegas, again, super busy guy, plays in a bunch of cover bands. He's a working musician. He's got a home studio, super talented guy. Um, and he's got gear and he's capable of doing films and video and stuff like that. We actually were going to start to get something going. I actually sat down with Todd Kearns and he interviewed me.
Okay.
The first part of a series. I think we talked for a couple hours.
Sure.
And we were going to kind of get the ball rolling. I think Billy's apprehensive to like I think he really wants to be involved in every aspect of it because it's like we don't want to put out something that's not done properly.
Yep.
But as far as talking about it, yes, we've got the talking part done many times over the years, and most people agree it would make an awesome documentary.
Absolutely.
But it would take getting a lot of people involved, I think, to tell it right. It can't just be interviewing me and Billy or the band, right? You want to get interviews with Brett Michaels or Slash or like people that also lived through it. That's what would make it interesting.
Yes.
And I think people would agree to do it because we're just as much a part of their history as they are of ours. I'm almost positive they wrote about Jetboy in all the Guns N' Roses books that each of them, Duff's book, Slash's book,
Yep.
were mentioned in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think, Jimmy probably his idea was like, yeah, well, let's get the ball rolling, but really you kind of need a person who is going to be the contact, like who's going to reach out to all these people and organize times to interview them or sit down and who's going to figure out the questions to ask. And I mean, it's a whole production, right? So I'm not up for it. I got zero time. So, but hopefully someday it will come to light. And, I've got, I still have a collection of stuff. I mean, this last year I was almost going to break down and sell a bunch of my personal collection. Like I have the custom leather pants that I wore in the Feel the Shake video.
Okay.
I was thinking, yeah, maybe someone will buy these and I could pay off some bills and they'll, Billy was kind of like, yeah, if you have to, I get it. A lot of people, do, but um, he's like, I would hold on to it if you can, because maybe something bigger is coming. They opened the Punk Rock Museum here in Vegas.
Yes.
Which is awesome, by the way. I've been several times. And Billy and I were talking about like, God, somebody should do a hair metal museum.
Totally.
And I still have a love-hate with the term hair metal, but I've gotten used to it because I'm like, who cares? Whatever. People know if you see a hair metal museum, you know what I mean? It's
yes.
There's good and bad that go along with it all. Same thing with punk rock. You know what I mean? It's a label, but I just think, especially here in Vegas, if somebody were to put that together, I mean, people would come.
Some people call my house the hair metal museum.
Exactly right. Anyway,
that's a great idea. Is there? I know you're open to more shows. Have you? Is the thought ever of, hey, I'm gonna try to write new music, or is that something that you're not ready to commit to yet?
Well, Billy wants to.
Okay.
He sent me a couple tracks. But yeah, I just right now in my life, because my kids are so young, it's difficult to do anything.
I'm sure.
I mean, I'm like my wife works all the time. My wife does hair. Okay, so she's got a salon. She also works at Area 15, which is a big complex here in Vegas, and she also works at one of the top 5 steakhouses in Vegas.
Sure.
She likes money. She likes to spend money, so she works all the time. And so I'm kind of the homebody. I take care of the house. I got my pets. I've got my kids. Like my kid will be starting soccer again in January. So I feel like I'm the last person to like put out a lot of energy.
Yeah.
even with that in mind, I had told myself I was going to rehearse 3 or 4 nights a week leading up to this UK tour. I rehearsed 2 times, right? And I hadn't sang it all since March.
Okay.
And so like that's my life, man. It's just busy, all the time. Um, if and for Billy, I know he talks about it. Yeah, we should, I know Brian would put out something for us. Let's start writing some more tracks. I'm not opposed to it, but I
Okay.
think he's got to step up a little more. Like, dude, you need to like write 10 songs, or at least the beginnings, and like send me a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, because if I'm gonna sit down and get flowing on something, it's not like a little bit here and a little bit there. I'm gonna like take a day where I've got a couple hours alone and I'm just gonna power through. I'm always writing, I've always got lyrics, I've got stuff on my phone, I've got song titles.
Yeah.
It's the curse of being a musician, right? You
Yeah.
can't get away from it. I wake up in the middle of the night with a melody and just something pops into my head and I got to get up and write it down or type it into my phone real quick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've always got ideas going. Yeah, I don't think it's the end for music for Jetboy. I think there's more stuff to come. The other side of it too is sometimes I feel like why? Because
I know.
what's going to happen? They're going to give us some money to record it, and then it's going to sit there.
I know.
And if we were out there touring, if we were active like LA Guns and Faster Pussycat and some of these bands that constantly keep doing it, then at least you got something to back up
Yeah.
the reason for putting out music. Otherwise, you're just making music, and it's disappointing when nobody hears it because nobody's promoting it. I don't have the
Right.
money to promote it. I don't even
Right.
have the time to promote it on the free shit that's out there. I run the social media for my company and myself and Jetboy, and you know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, I don't want to fucking post more stuff that's, what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like, in the next couple of years, my kids will be a little older, they'll be a little more self-sufficient. Hopefully time will open up a little for me, and I can, get back to music again a little bit more.
You speaking of social medias, what social? I know you have Facebook, you have Instagram. What else?
Yeah, that's pretty much all I do. I don't
Okay.
do TikTok,
Yeah.
but I run. So there's the Jetboy Rocks, then there's the Mickey Finn Jetboy, and then I also run Don Juan. Don Juan Pomade is the hair product company, and we do everything men's grooming. So we do beard products, hair products,
Okay.
pomades, hairsprays. It's a great line.
Awesome.
And so I do the Don Juan page. I also do some stuff with Lucky 13. Yeah, I've got a trade show. The Las Vegas Barber Expo is here this weekend, so I'll be there, running our booth and doing all that this weekend.
Awesome. I will put all the links to your socials and everything so people can follow you and keep up with you. Is there anything I missed? Anything that you're like, you know what, I really would like to let people know about this?
I don't think so. Cold Blue Rebels, Jetboy, Don Juan Pomade.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's you've been so gracious with your time. I thank you
Thank
so
you.
and you have just a fascinating story. I
Yeah,
hope people dig into your history and to Jetboy. Mickey Finn, thank you so much for coming on.
thank you. And it's guys like you that keep it alive. I never say no to a podcast. Sometimes people lose their patience with me scheduling it, but I never say no because that's what keeps it alive. And I appreciate you promoting us and keeping it going as well.
And should you decide to put out new stuff, I will always play it on my radio show. I'll always promote it on my socials, and so we'll be following you. And man, I'm rooting for you. Thanks again.
Thank you.